During all these talks in the last few days that were so intense, and you talk about so many things that I'm still thinking about, and I suppose that most people who attended the talks have also a lot to think these days. But I wanted to talk about how it was that you decided to attend these events of the 40th anniversary of punk in Argentina, in Brazil, in Mexico.
Well, I have to say that it didn't even occur to me that it was a 40-year anniversary of punk. And it doesn't interest me that it's a 40-year anniversary of punk either. So, I mean, I was sort of unaware of it. So, I was asked to do some stuff in London and didn't, because it was just a tourist event. I don't know how it is in South America, but it was just a bit of sort of commercial nonsense in London.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, now Foreign Minister, was the guy who sort of supported the idea. Well, I mean, when the Mayor of London, who's a sort of Eton-educated, Oxbridge, wealthy snob, starts promoting punk events, and I think you have to ask pretty serious questions. So, it was absolutely nothing at all to do with that. I mean, the reason I was in Argentina, the reason I was in Brazil, and the reason I'm here is because of people, and people I like and want to be with. And share things with.
Yeah.
Which isn't going to have a lot to do with anniversaries of punk, quite honestly, because I'm not particularly interested in talking about, you know, something that happened 40 years ago, because I don't think it's relevant anymore.
No, yeah, that was, you made it very clear in all these days what your interest was and the points that you are trying to make. But I'm also aware that quite a few people, or many people, were maybe expecting you to talk about other things, and that was the interesting point, that it felt as if you were pulling down stereotypes and making clear that we should pay more attention to what we feel and develop in that direction, instead of paying so much attention to what punk or hip hop or rules of different ideas we may want to follow.
To that, you know, I mean, I sort of see myself as a deconstructionist in the sense of removing illusions, removing pretenses, removing vanities, my own primarily, but equally, if people want to listen, maybe I can help them, if they want to, remove some of their vanities and pretenses and illusions. And it's my only interest really, is to get down to what's actually happening. I mean, if I was to, it's an absurd business of, you know, celebrating something, the anniversary of punk. Well, if I represented that, how could I be the person I am? You know, I am the person I am because of this moment, and this moment determines the person I am. So I'm not going to travel, you know, 6,000 miles or whatever it is to talk about something that happened 40 years ago that I'm not interested in and doesn't represent me. And anyone who sort of hangs on to ideas of themselves, because that's what it would require me to do. I mean, I'm not Penny Rimbaud from Crass. You know, I'm Penny Rimbaud from Penny Rimbaud. And I'm not even Penny Rimbaud. Penny Rimbaud's just a name I give this voice. I mean, I don't know who's speaking, and I don't mind who's speaking. It's certainly not me, the ego, because sometimes I disagree with it. So what's disagreeing? The ego's disagreeing with what I'm saying because it doesn't like it. Tough. So those are just manifestations. You know, Penny Rimbaud of Crass is a manifestation. The Crass bit's a manifestation, the Penny Rimbaud bit's a manifestation. They're all inventions, they don't mean anything. They're the things that keep us apart. And one of the things I really resent is the way that, you know, Penny Rimbaud of Crass gets all this respect and is expected to have lots of sensible intelligent things to say. Well, Penny Rimbaud from Christ said what he said 40 years ago. And Penny Rimbaud, who's sitting here now, doesn't know what he's talking about, and doesn't pretend to know what he's talking about, just as Penny Rimbaud of Crass 40 years ago didn't know what he was talking about, he just talked.
But you have a message.
I don't have a message at all. I mean, I am a vehicle for a message. Penny Rimbaud. The ego doesn't have any message at all except self-enlargement and vanity.
You talk a lot about ego and how to deconstruct the ego and find your real self. And it's difficult to see what is the ego and what is the real self.
I don't think it is really. I mean, you can tell the difference between ego and the real self because you can hear it. I'm hearing it right now coming out of my mouth. But, you know, I'm using my ego. I have to. How else can I manifest out of the silence, out of the emptiness, where I belong and where I exist? I don't exist here. I don't exist in this manifestation. This manifestation is quite simply what I put on in the morning, the same as I put some clothes on, I put on this manifestation, Penny Rimbaud being Penny Rimbaud. Well, there isn't a Penny Rimbaud. Penny Rimbaud is a totally egotistical device. How one trains, or how the ego becomes trained, or how one recognizes that actually everything in the material world can be no more than egotistical construct, thus, like the Buddhists would say, an illusion, means we're actually not even moving in any real space. I said it was chapter 3, didn't I?
It's difficult. This is very difficult because I try to understand. I think sometimes I understand a part of it, but to me it's like still like separated from what I call reality, that I know is a fiction, a construction, but still for me it's like very separated, all these ideas that you are talking about, and then what I see every day and all the situations in which we live that sometimes are more violent, or acting with people who don't care about all this stuff we are talking about. And it's difficult not to live with having all that in mind, looking for who we really are, and then interacting with everyday things.
I really can't see why, because there's within the sort of theatre, within the grand illusion, within the grand manifestation, I know what's happening as well. I'm aware of violence, I'm aware of war, I'm aware of joy, I'm aware of sorrow and suffering. But one's in a much better position to actually do something about that if you're not actually involved in it. My argument is that the egotistical self actually endorses that. One's coming in at the level that it exists in. Unless one can come from a different place into these areas of suffering, then actually all you're doing is simply adding to the suffering. Which is why so much sort of protest, so much objection, so much conflict is simply an endorsement of the very thing that it claims to be opposing. The army requires an enemy.
Yes.
That's what armies are for. They have to have someone to operate with. It's the same as doctors require illness.
And how you disarm an army, like how we can oppose violence or violent people or violent situations?
By appropriate action. I mean,
yeah.
The ridiculous idea that we can sort of plan how we deal with it if suddenly 23 armed people leap over this wall. Well, fear which is the very thing that so inhibits people's lives, is exactly that. Oh, blimey, maybe it's going to happen. You know, like it's a build-up of something which might happen, might not happen. Simple fact is most people live, or many people live, very much within the domain that not only might it happen, it is happening. In a constant state of fear. Whether that's fear of not being able to pay the rent, or being attacked in the street, or a new world war, of global warming, blah, 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 blah. And they're all just things that hold us stuck within it. And when we're stuck within it, we actually add to it. Although those things operate on fear.
Yeah.
They're bound to fear. And also makes our reaction almost guaranteed to fail. If someone starts being insulting to you and you respond, "Don't you talk to me like that," well, that's the beginning of an argument.
Yeah.
So effectively, how you respond in a personal level like that is actually a demonstration of what I'm talking about. If you respond angrily or with aggression, then you will start the process. And actually, most people who want an argument will push you until you do that. And that's a situation that people feel crushed by. They're pushed and pushed and pushed. You know, they're pushed by constant threat, constant this, constant. It really is endless, the threat, as you know.
Yeah.
And being aware of danger is not fear. Being aware that if you're walking down the street at night and it's dark and there's no one around, that you're possibly in a greater danger than if there's lots and lots of people in a well-lit street. It's sensible fear, if you like. So let's not call it fear, let's call it danger. Being aware of danger. That's a totally different thing. If you're aware of danger, you say, well, how can I make it better? So maybe you learn a martial art, or maybe you carry a pepper spray, or whatever you do, you've made a rational, sensible, reasonable way of dealing with a problem. Fear prevents one from dealing with a problem, because all you're doing is getting mashed by the problem, like in a personal domestic argument. And that's why I've been saying in these talks that really there's no difference at all between domestic argument and war. They're one and the same thing, and they damage in the same way.
Yeah, like violence starts in a home.
Yeah.
And that was something you were talking about yesterday or the day before yesterday, I don't remember, when you said that many men behave violently against women because it's a reality that in Argentina, Mexico, we are suffering lots of violence, assassinations, rapes, and women are really in danger. You said that many men act violently because they know that the essence of the matriarchy is there, and maybe they can't stand it, or they don't know how to handle it. And all this you said about women is very important for us, because in many scenes, in different scenes, not just in the punk scene, whatever, sometimes we feel in danger because it's the real thing that we live every day. So your comments on that were very helpful. I don't know, I hope that make people start thinking differently or reconsider all these situations.
Well, I think that, I mean, men are utterly dependent upon women for their favourite activity, and that's sex. And they're utterly dependent, and they can't, it's a very different, male sexuality is a very different thing. It has to go out. It is an aggressive act in a way, because it has to penetrate. You know, so the whole architecture of sort of male sexuality becomes distorted. Men know they're on their own in that sense. They've got to find a mate somehow. I don't think that's something that women suffer from. It's something I've spoken with women about. You know, that they don't have the same sort of sexual motivation almost. I mean, I don't believe that men are in the least bit interested in procreation. They might be as an intellectual idea, or they might be as a sort of biological necessity, you know, because why indigenous families may have large families, because they know a large number of them are going to die very young. Although that's got nothing to do with sexuality. That's to do with actually function. And men are out on their own sexually, and they have a hard job of it. They have to hunt. Well, that's part of, you know, the violence of men. They're not very good at hunting. They're not very good.
You have sons, daughters. You ever wanted to procreate, to become, to go into a family, form a family?
No.
You've ever been interested?
No.
Why not?
I mean, I've had a sort of wonderful life. Very, very, you know, I've had my sorrows and I've had my joys, as we all do, and I've had my pain and I've had my pleasure. But, you know, I would never inflict that willingly or wishfully in another form. All of the things you're talking about, you know, the pain, the suffering, the threat. What if I was to have a daughter? Do I want her to have to live in this world? No, I don't. You know, it's a practical decision. You can't hide them away either. You can't think, oh, well, I'll go and live in a nice little commune in the countryside. It's still the same problems there, the same suffering. They're just sort of temporary escape zones. Nothing's changed by them. They're temporary escape zones. And they actually, in a way, endorse, again, the very thing that they appear to be criticising. And that's why, you know, yesterday I was talking about being very wary of community, the whole idea of community. Community is exactly that, it's a separate and very often isolated group of people. Well, another word for community is ghetto. And we don't have to look very far in history as to what happens to those communities.
But, so what is your idea of becoming related to other people? Is no community, is...
Well, we are intrinsically and symbiotically related to other people. I'm aware that I don't feel in any way separate from other people. Whether I like them, whether my ego likes a person or doesn't like a person is utterly irrelevant. Which is why I'm not interested in what my ego thinks about people. Whether my ego might fancy you, or someone else, or not someone. I'm not interested in that. Because there's something deeper. I know that existentially, the act is done. If you truly love, you don't need any of that stuff. I don't need any proof of the fact that I coexist. I feel at one with everyone. Even if I don't like them, I feel at one with them. And if we want to separate ourselves, then why would we want to separate ourselves? Because we want fun, we want pleasure, or we want pain. They're all the same thing. So we go out into the world and we manifest in that way. Boys go around and punch each other. Or they fuck the first thing they can find. And they think that's a life. It's just a life I'm not interested in.